We're gonna make sure YouTube is up and running and we're gonna get started. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna wet my whistle too while we're waiting for YouTube to get up, people. Made it. Back. So while we're waiting for YouTube to get up and running, first of all, YouTube, when you're up, let me know. Give me a little shout out. But Facebook, what's going on? Can you please like and share this video? Once again, hearts and likes only. That is very, 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 very important. Because, well, if you don't, if you do, I know I'm gonna say some stuff. Once again, we talk about controversial topics, so I'm gonna say things that you're gonna want to make an angry face at in support of what I'm saying. But when you do that, it messes up the Facebook algorithms, and it actually hurts our chances of the video reaching the people it needs to reach, which we do not want. Facebook or YouTube, if you don't mind giving me a little. Oh, nice, cool. So I got a shout out for YouTube. They said that it is fine. Hi, David. David's on YouTube. What else we got? Cheryl or Chris. I see Chris on Facebook. Anybody else want to shout out? Let me know. Let me know while I'm over here getting everything set up. Yes, Tawana, you are very true. You are very, very right. You are very, very right. Oh, there's a lot of aspects about this protest today that we're going to talk about. I'm excited. Because I don't even think I've done really a live stream addressing this. Everything has really been done. And I do pre-recorded videos about a lot of this stuff, but I've talked about it so much. I think it's almost about that time to wrap it all together. However, please share the video. Share the video. Share wherever you can. Hearts and likes only. Hearts and likes only. If you agree with something I said that makes you angry, then put a big old love heart beside it. On Facebook, if you don't mind, YouTube, if you don't mind sharing this video as well before we get started, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. I was on a leave of absence. Hurricane Irma had its way with my AT&T coverage, so we're trying to make up for it now. We got a lot of videos to do, a lot of videos to post. You're probably going to see about maybe 15 to 20 videos this week from me. Just because I had so much I've been wanting to post and some things I've been wanting to cover, but I just couldn't because I didn't want to bring it in bad quality. I wanted to give you guys the best quality that I could bring. So shout out to those of you who've been supporting me through Patreon and things like that. Greatly, greatly appreciated. While I couldn't work for the 2 weeks during the hurricane, you guys kind of help keep me afloat, whether you knew it or not. And so I definitely owe you all a huge thanks. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters, and those who have donated to our One Follow $1 campaign. Because, like I said, without you guys, it would have been a very, very hard week. I wouldn't have been able to evacuate. So I owe you all a thanks. I see hi Zanga from YouTube. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You people on YouTube be having some crazy names. It's always hard to get the YouTube names right. Give me about 1 more minute. I'm going to share this to Twitter, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Why didn't it come up on my YouTube page? There we go. For those of you who are on YouTube watching, I would greatly appreciate it if you could share this link. Alright, so it looks like we're just about ready. Share this to my group. Yes. Awesome. So yeah, we're just about ready. We're gonna go ahead and get started. So once again, thank you so very much to the my Patreon supporters and those who have joined us in the One Follow $1 campaign. Like I said, I am in South Florida. I was in the county and city that got the initial evacuation order from Hurricane Irma, and therefore I had to leave, not fast, but really fast. I'm not joking. So because of that, I had to miss a lot of work, which means I had to miss, out on money that pays the bills for my family and my fur babies. And because of you all, I was able to evacuate. I was able to get somewhere safe. I was able to continue to have money to eat and things like that. So, once again, I'm constantly telling my Patreon supporters thank you, but seriously, I cannot tell you all how much your support really was the make or break as to whether or not I would have gotten through that situation without being in incredible debt at this point. So thank you all so much. I greatly appreciate it. So moving on, it's been a long week. It's been a crazy week in both politics and sports. And as most of you all know, I am a huge sports fan. So I love weeks like this when politics and sports kind of meshes together, and it forces us to have very necessary conversations, because there are a lot of people who will try to dichotomize sports or politics and sports like they've never been intertwined. The politics of sports is very potent and very real, and anyone who pays attention to sports or the business side of sports should really should understand that, because, well, there have been careers. Colin Kaepernick's career, for example, has been essentially ended, hopefully not for good, but there have been careers ended because of things like what we're seeing right now. Muhammad Abdul from the Lakers, about 3 decades ago, did a very similar national anthem protest. Luckily, or unlucky for him, but luckily for us now, I didn't know about it, and many people probably did not know about it because, well, the truth of the matter is we didn't have social media. But now, I'm educated on that situation specifically because we have the internet. So we're in the middle of the information age. We like to look at. We know about the big Muhammad Ali situation. Very rare people know about the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar situation. He didn't come into the league with the name Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, for those of you who don't know. But the problem with Kareem was that he was so good they couldn't ignore it. He was consistent his whole career, so they just kind of pushed him to the back burner. We have Oscar Robinson, who, even though it wasn't explicitly about how minorities were treated in the NBA, Oscar Robinson constantly fought for what LeBron and Chris Paul, as league reps for the players, were able to achieve, which is that he said that they're not getting paid what they're worth, and he was absolutely right. Basketball players make a lot of money for billionaires. The idea of a salary cap is pitched so that, oh yeah, we want the competition to be fair and balanced, when it has nothing to do with that. What it's really about is the fact that billionaires don't want to spend more money than they have to. Whereas we know in soccer, actually, it's funny, almost every sport dominated by minorities, had a salary cap. However, those not dominated by minorities, soccer, baseball, golf, tennis, things that where you either play for a prize, or like in soccer where you can just buy a player for $1 billion. Damn near $1 billion. They don't. You can buy Cristiano Ronaldo for $1 billion, but LeBron James, we're excited because he gets paid $200 million over 5 years. The truth of the matter is that politics is behind a lot of that. Politics, and then the racial undertones that some of these owners have. We can't say this because an owner lets a black player play for his team, that he's not racist, as we've seen with the former owner of the Clippers, right? Like, if your slave is going to make you a billionaire or make you millions more, then you're going to let that slave, keep making you money. And Oscar Robinson has actually been, for those of you who don't know who Oscar Robinson is, he really should be in the conversation for like the top 3 best basketball player ever. He was the only player before Russell Westbrook did it this year. He was the only player to average a triple-double. So how can someone who literally was a point guard averaging a triple-double, doing something that LeBron hadn't even come close to doing yet, why isn't he being constantly talked about like what we do with Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, people who seemingly just play their role and move on? Well, the truth of the matter is there are a lot of people who believe that Oscar Robertson, who at the time watched him, is better than Michael Jordan, is better than Kobe Bryant, is better than LeBron James. But Oscar Robertson, what that name means to league owners is that players are going to unionize and stand up and demand what they're worth, which for me personally, that's a big deal, right? Because black people own how many NBA teams? Michael Jordan, who was the one who played his part, is the only one who's a majority owner. And Magic Johnson is kind of like he's increasing his ownership in the Lakers, but it's nowhere near what it should be. In the NFL, there are no black owners. In the MLB, there are no black owners, etc., etc. So we need, in politics, business and politics go hand in hand. Because of that, sports and politics go hand in hand. So what we're seeing right now in the Kaepernick debate, in the national anthem protest, is nothing more than a manifestation of what we've seen happening over history, and really tensions that have been really gathering since football became a heavily integrated sport. The protests today were huge. They were amazing. And there were half of me that was a little irritated that it took all of this for them to finally stand in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick, or I should say kneel in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick. If it really meant as much to them as it should, okay, I'll be honest. If it meant as much to them as it should, then it should have been done way sooner. Okay, they should have been, overall, the league in general should have been kneeling much sooner. However, that was not and hasn't been the case. But I don't want anyone to fret over this fact, because the truth of the matter is that's history. People think that black people were just, oh man, look at that guy Martin Luther King. Yeah, he's doing the right thing. We should all gather behind him. Hell no, that's not what happened at all. In fact, if the black community as a whole was as united behind Martin Luther King's message, and even Malcolm X's message, and Huey P. Newton, the method of all of the black activists at that time, we would have gotten a lot of change a lot quicker. We would have been a lot more politically organized a lot quicker. There would be less ignorance in the community. Even some of the ignorance that exists today, there would be a lot less of that if all of them felt this way they should and were educated about that situation all at once. However, that's never the case, right? It's the catalyst is very rarely acknowledged, right, when it comes to social justice. Rosa Parks wasn't the first one to sit down in the white man's seat on a bus. It was actually a little girl. And then the activism group that Rosa Parks was a part of said, wow, that's a brilliant idea. Let's do it. That's where that came from. So it's never really the catalyst that gets credit, but only because of social media today is Kaepernick even getting the amount of love and support that he should have gotten in others in the past who have boycotted and who have protested via their sports platform should have gotten. So it's amazing what we've seen today. I'm going to count that as a huge victory, because Donald Trump keeps making unforced errors. Things like this take place. One of the reasons that I'm so happy that Donald Trump is in office. Like I've said, if our choices were between Hillary Clinton, one of the best manipulators politically economically and as far as foreign policy is concerned, if she would have been in office, she knows for the most part all of the right things to say to convince people to be maybe not excited about what's happening in their country, but to be okay with it. To say, okay, well, it's better than so-and-so, or it's better than this. No, we need someone who is going to make so many unforced errors for the conservative side of the extremist right-wing conservative Christian-esque nationalist side of the movement that everyone has no choice but to speak up. Because, well, what do you look like if you're allowing people to be called sons of bitches by the president of the United States because they decide to use their First Amendment right? God forbid, though. God forbid if anyone ever called out Trump, if anybody called Trump a son of a bitch in front of one of his supporters for breaking a law, which he has in fact broke a lot of them. I'm not naive to the deep state, and what they're trying to do to undermine him, and just undermine really not him but the populist movement, I should say. But he's making it so easy for the deep state to turn around and say, bro, you keep screwing yourself up. And all we had to do is put in the right prosecutor, the right federal judge, the right Congress people to form the right committee to get him right out of office. And it's great for me because that means he's easy to control. The circumstances are easier to mitigate. Racism did not start with Donald Trump, and it will damn sure not end with Donald Trump. But he has his purpose, and his purpose is to really shed a light, whether it be voluntarily or involuntarily, on the issues that have been deeply rooted in the foundation of this country that have not disappeared simply because a law got passed. That didn't disappear simply because Jim Crow is no longer officially existent, even though if you've lived in the South and have tried to vote, or if you've lived in the South and dealt with certain laws, Jim Crow is actually alive and well. So I'm happy that he's here versus Hillary. I'm not happy about what he said. I'm absolutely thrilled about Steph Curry and the Warriors sitting out. I'm absolutely thrilled about LeBron James calling out Donald Trump. I'm thrilled that the NFL owners have now had to come out which I'm not happy that they didn't support Kaepernick. Let's be very honest, they did not. But they did have to come out and pretty much say that they were okay with the protests now. They're forced to, because they could use every excuse under the book for how Kaepernick why wasn't he being signed? You can't just choose. You can't just say he's not being signed because of the national anthem protest. They're billionaires, so they have great lawyers, and they would know better than to say something like that. But what you do is you deflect. What you say, if any of you have been paying attention, you know what I'm talking about. He's not talented enough. And then they come out with all of the statistics, and they're like, yeah, he is. And he's damn sure better than the backups, and he's actually better than over half of the starters in the league. But what's next? Oh, he wants more money. No, actually, that wasn't it. Because he never said that. And his agent actually came out and said that he never asked for more money, so he doesn't understand what they're talking about. Oh, he wants a starting position. He never said that either. They said that he has to come out and say he wants to play. Yet the Miami Dolphins signed Jay Cutler, who had said, I'm retiring. And they reached out to Tim Tebow, who is playing baseball right now, who never asked to be signed back to an NFL team. However, they said that Colin Kaepernick had to be, he had to say that I'm interested in playing in the NFL, even though his agent is actively looking for, NFL contracts for Colin Kaepernick. So Colin Kaepernick may have inadvertently shown a side of the NFL that many people may have been naive to. And that's the truth. Many people, including the NFL players, may have been naive. I have not been. I've always had my gripes with NFL, always. But there are people who think that they just see what's on the field, they see what's in those press conferences, but they got to remember that none of us are part of that good old boys club. And that's the truth. There's other issues that are also tied to the Colin Kaepernick discussion. the issue of players unionizing effectively so that they can collectively bargain for what they're worth. For those of you who don't know, the NFL collective bargaining agreement is possibly the worst collective bargaining agreement in all of sports. Okay? So how do they, a good example of this, if you're injured and you can't play that game, you don't get paid. If you're suspended, you don't get paid. If they cut you, they're not penalized. You don't get paid. Your contracts are not guaranteed. The only ones who do get guaranteed money, at least a little bit of the money guaranteed out of their contracts, are absolute studs, superstars, and actually that's why they're able to keep the union so weak. Because they take a player like Tom Brady, they take a player like Drew Brees, like Cam Newton, like just players who they'll say that player deserves $150 million, and they'll pay them $150 million. So the faces of the league will calm down, because a face of the league, like a Tom Brady, for example, is not about to sit out for a season to do a damn thing for anybody else because he got his money already. Russell Wilson, same thing. Cam Newton even. Same, obviously, he hasn't been taking a knee or anything like that. So, essentially, the players that you don't see taking a knee for Colin Kaepernick are the same ones that are actively preventing NFL players from being able to collectively bargain effectively. And because of that, NFL players have been like crabs in a barrel. Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think that if you got a league that's 70% black, if anything, they should at least be able to recognize and understand that your background, your similar financial backgrounds, the lack of security that you have, the fact that you've put your entire life into playing this one sport that your parents have put their entire lives, your young adult life, your child, they know that, and they know that people aren't willing to give that up. Now, if you're, you come from a nice quarterbacks generally come from nice backgrounds, conservative, pretty well off. You got to be part of that good old boy club because, to play quarterback, it's not enough to just be a great quarterback. You have to know the coach. You've been playing quarterback since blah, blah, blah. Usually coaches are people who have a little bit of extra time on their hand because they're business people, or they're pretty, like I'm talking about high school coaches, like high school and middle school coaches, and recreational coaches and travel team coaches and things like that. These are people who have a little bit more time on their hand. And you're friends with the coach and y'all grew up together playing football, and you don't have that connection, which is why it's actually a lot harder and it's rare to see black quarterbacks because, well, it's not that black people can't throw. It's just that black people don't have the network to be at a position like that. It's also why you see black quarterbacks often demonized in the NFL. It's why you hear black quarterbacks will rarely hear their name mentioned when you're talking about some of the best ever, and it happens far too often. So they make the NFL like crabs in a barrel, NFL players, because everyone wants that one. If I don't show up to that game, if I don't lace up for that game, I don't get paid, right? In the NBA, they tried to use the faces of the NBA, but it wasn't during Adam Silver's era. It was during David Stern's era. They tried to use the same tactic with the NBA players, but LeBron, Chris Paul, and a couple of others said, no, that's not happening because we're a business just like you're a business. We know our worth. Y'all came to my high school games to watch me play. There were Nike, Adidas, and so were lined up outside of my damn locker trying to get me to sign. So, no, not only am I going to bring myself up and tell you all that I need to be paid what I'm worth, but by making it so that I'm paid what I'm worth, I'm going to make sure Chris Paul's paid with his worth as a superstar, and I'm going to also make sure that sixth man to the last man on the roster is also getting paid what they're worth, with their time, their effort, because it's not only about what you're making as an NBA player or as an athlete, professional athlete in general. It's about all the time and effort you put in up until that point. Just to be a person who's a backup on a roster is extremely important, especially if 3 or 4 players get injured at once, which happens really often. And LeBron, because of that, pushed up the entire league salary over the course of like a 10-year period to the point where there are 33-year-old superstars about to make $250,000 over the course of 4 to 5 years. And that money is guaranteed. And they have incentives on top of that. So You have the total opposite happening in the league. But then Adam Silver took over. They had to sit out. They had to go on lockout, right? Adam Silver took over and even started giving them more incentives, conceding more to what the NBA players wanted. And they're rising together. The league itself, look at the state of the NBA versus the state of the NFL. The NFL's ratings are plummeting. People are leaving early. You have players retiring in 3 years, not because they're injured, not because they're worried about CTE or anything like that. They're like, well, my money's not guaranteed anyway, so the moment I have a better opportunity, I'm out. Whereas NBA players are telling their kids, don't even touch a football anytime in your life. Partially because of the injuries. Another part is because nothing is guaranteed in the NFL. So that is a whole nother aspect to the Colin Kaepernick situation. And this is something that's been an issue with sports in general for a long time, but specifically with sports, once again, dominated by minorities like basketball and football. Now, the NFL handled it beautifully. The NBA handled the collective bargaining agreement situation beautifully, and the NBA is soaring because of that. The NFL, on the other hand, has done the total opposite. And look what's happened. All hell's breaking loose. They're trying to make examples out of everyone, especially Colin Kaepernick. Now, think about it like this. Now, we know that the NFL ratings are plummeting, and it's debated as to why, but we know why. The NFL is plummeting. The NFL ratings are plummeting specifically because the people who are boycotting, combined with the people who are mad about the protesting, combined with the fact that the NFL ratings have actually been plummeting pretty steadily for the last 3 to 5 years. So when Donald Trump came out and made it, pretty much drew a line in the sand, and not even just a regular line, but this is a legality issue as well. All of a sudden, the owners were like, "Oh, you can't say that. I'm disappointed in you." Disappointed in what? That he's talking about that he's talking about your players who are now about to be so pissed off that they're going to protest and mess up your ratings even more and galvanize those who are in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick? Or are you actually disappointed in the fact that black people are being murdered at a ridiculously high rate? One cop murdering a black person or a Latino person for anything other than they felt their lives were immediately in danger is one too many. So let me go ahead and square that away for you all. Because I hate when people diminish the lives of minorities. Oh, there are higher rates of black on black crime in Chicago. You don't give a shit about, you know what? If next time somebody tells you the black on black crime argument, which is a stupid straw man argument anyway, but tell them this. If they actually gave a damn about the black on black crime in Chicago, they would know that there are hundreds, and black on black crime in general, they would know that there are hundreds of organizations dedicated to curbing black on black crime amongst youth. They also tell them this. People kill people who look like them. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just because that's the way demographics work. You're more likely to kill a black person like a white person, more likely to kill a white person like a Latino is more likely to kill a Latino. Because these issues usually spawn from beef within that community or discord within that community. It's simple. But either way, if they actually cared about black on black crime, then they would know that there's been organizations dedicated to this. And it has absolutely nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick's protests. Right? Colin Kaepernick is protesting because if a black male or a black woman kills another black male or a black woman and it's caught on tape, they are going to jail. If a cop, no matter the race, kills a black male or even another person for that damn matter, but a black male, because usually what he's talking about is how black people are treated systematically in black communities, because systematic racism really what you're seeing when you see a black person killed by a white cop or a cop in general is the symptom. It is the conclusion of systematic racism and all of the factors that it took to arrive at that very moment. Okay? So it's not that Colin Kaepernick, because it's killing me, the arguments that people make The insults that people have. They call Colin Kaepernick racist, for example. How the hell is he racist? What has Colin Kaepernick ever said about white people? I've actually never even seen a quote where he uses the word white. He's never, and trust me, there's some times where I wish he would. They say, oh, he just wants attention. How? Did y'all, I don't know if y'all remember. Once again, I used to be a big NFL fan. When Colin Kaepernick did his protest in the preseason, he was benched by Chip Kelly because Chip Kelly is a racist, by the way. He hates superstars. He hates specifically black superstars who go against his will or who says anything that would take the attention from him. For those of you who don't know, look up what he did to Sean McCoy and look at what he did to Deshaun Jackson. He's always been like that. So he was benched. He was sitting down, chilling with his head down like this. Wasn't waving. Wasn't like, wearing some bright shirt with a black power fist on. Nothing like that. He had a jersey on. He just sat there quiet like this. You know who came to him? Not the starter of the game. He wasn't the starter. He wasn't the starter at the time. He barely threw the football. The media chased him down. The media heckled him, and he was forced to answer, which he legitimately, weirdly enough, because like I said, I don't think that he thought it was going to be this big of a deal. Because he didn't even have he had an answer prepared because he knew why he was doing it, but it wasn't something that you would present to the press. Like it wasn't like a press release answer. If for those of you who watch football or sports, you know what I'm talking about, or those of you who are in media and marketing, it wasn't something. He sat down like this, and guess what? Even when he sat down, he said, "You know what? My friend reached out to me and said that he's a little offended because he would rather me not sit down." So in a concession, a very unnecessary concession, a concession I don't even think he should have gave, he took a kneel instead of sitting. Mind you, he didn't even want the attention. Mind you, since he has not been signed, what has Colin Kaepernick said in response to him not being signed to an NFL team? He hasn't insulted anybody. He hasn't attacked anyone. He hasn't been, I'm sure. You don't think that Colin Kaepernick has been invited on First Take, Undisputed with Skip and Shannon? You don't think that he's been invited on Jimmy Kimmel? You don't think that he's been invited on The Daily Show? All these different shows? You don't think he's been invited to? Of course he has. He doesn't want these protests to be about him. And the fact that a man taking a knee has garnered such harsh criticism, the fact that people can't even acknowledge what he is talking about. They say, oh, it's about the soldiers. Hold on, homie. I'm a veteran. I support exactly what he's doing. And most of the veterans I know support it as well. It really shows, well, one, the unfortunate racial undertones of this country, the issues that we have that aren't being dealt with and were never being talked about until Donald Trump and then Colin Kaepernick in a lot of ways. It shows the lack of education that people have. Because if they knew why the national anthem was being stood up for in sports to begin with, then they would understand. They don't know that the military uses it as a recruiting tool, and they pay the NFL millions of dollars, millions, not tens, but hundreds over the last 5 to 6 or 6 to 7 years. The NFL players did not start coming out to the national anthem until 2009, ladies and gentlemen. And it was specifically because the military paid them out of their recruiting budget. Why? Because even they know the dominant demographic of the NFL. Conservative, middle class, white males. They pay for that guy who comes back from deployment and hugs his family, and they make it look so emotional. They pay for those people to come out and hold the flags. They pay for the singer. That's the military recruiting a bunch of sheep. And the people who are getting mad about, you're disrespecting the flag. I'm holding the flag to its standard that it supposedly has. That's what Colin Kaepernick was doing. And the insults towards Colin Kaepernick. What kills me is that I think I started getting more upset about a lot of these insults because I know what they actually want to say. You feel me, guys? Do y'all feel me? Do y'all feel me? Like, they say racist. Colin Kaepernick never mentioned race. He never mentioned white people. Cops are not a race, by the way. They say racist. They say, he's a. Well, I've seen some explicit racial terms, but they say, he sucks. He's a horrible player. No, he's not. If you have any iota of, if you know football, you'll know Colin Kaepernick is still a top 15 player. With the last season that he played, before his quarterback, he had nobody on that team. First of all, the combined touchdown total of all the wide receivers, of his starting wide receiver core, was 10 total, with the running back actually catching touchdowns too. They were horrible. The organization screwed him in a lot of different ways, but that's totally irrelevant. So, but I mean, it's not totally irrelevant, but what I'm saying is, so they use his play, and then, he was a racist. He never mentioned anyone's race. And then all the insults start coming and coming and coming. And you're thinking, you got to think, like, what? Hold on. The man who donated 100% of his jersey sales is an evil, attention-seeking man? A man who has multiple charities, not only domestically, but abroad as well, is an evil, attention-seeking man? This man has donated in the season that he knew could potentially be his last season. He donated millions upon millions to charity. I want you all to understand something. If he was protesting the way veterans are treated in this country, you think he would still be getting the same reaction that he's getting right now? If he stood up and said that? Because people weren't mad about him protesting until he said why. And then after that, we never really heard as to why he was protesting. They always say, but the troops. But the troops. Don't speak for me. If you've had, really don't speak for me, period, as an individual soldier. But don't speak for me as a veteran if you've never served and you think you understand how we feel about what we're fighting for. We don't fight for cloth. We fight for values. And a lot of these values, unfortunately, even the reality of the situation is our values, the values that the flag is supposed to represent, has not been being upheld by the recent conflicts and wars that we've been waging. So that's the truth. But you haven't had a problem with presidents and congressmen and congresswomen not upholding those values. You haven't had a problem with your racist politician not upholding those values. You haven't had a problem with the list really is too extensive to even go into all the details of. But the values that the flag is supposed to be representing, were you that outraged in your black, in your, because you gotta have a Black History class now, like the whole month. We got a whole month, guys, dedicated to Black History Month. Were you that outraged when you found out about Jim Crow? You're like, those politicians were disrespecting the flag. I can't believe them. How dare they? Were you that outraged? Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is Trump pretty much daily. Were you outraged whenever he called for those NFL players to be fired? When he tried to use his position of authority to influence the outcome of someone's career because they are exercising their First Amendment right? Were you that outraged? The hilariously ironic thing about two of my biggest issues with the people who have a problem with Colin, because I understand some people don't like it. There's a difference between not liking it and having a problem with it, right? I think we can all agree with that. There's a difference between not liking it and having a problem with it. Now, the people that don't like it, they have their reasons. I don't agree with them, but guess what? They said, you know what? I don't like it, but I support them. Hell, that's democracy right there. That's what we love about this country, right? You don't have to like it, but damn, you got to support it. You got to hear his message. But the two most ironic things about these type of people, right? And you know what I'm talking about. Is they call everyone a snowflake. You defend a immigrant who has been here their entire lives, is a productive member of society, who gets deported through illegal means. Mind you, a lot of immigrants have come here from South America, for those of you who don't know, because of our policies, which is why a lot of progressives are happy to take immigrants in. The refugees from overseas in Syria and in Yemen and other places, our policies are causing them to run. So that's why a lot of us are kind of like, well, of course, they're more worried about surviving than filling out paperwork. Apologies. So, but those type of the people who we get offended by people's lives being diametrically affected by words and policies that Trump and the people who like Trump try to implement. We're snowflakes for that, right? We're snowflakes for saying you shouldn't be killed because of the color of your skin or your ethnic background. We're snowflakes for that. We're snowflakes for all of these things. These are the gun-toting. You're a snowflake. Okay. But you're offended by a guy who took a knee? You're a snowflake if you're upset about people's lives being ended through bombs, and you're a snowflake if someone is being legitimately racist in their commentary. You're a snowflake if you get offended by police brutality. You're a snowflake if you think that people should have equal rights for marriage. You're a snowflake for all of these things. But if you don't get offended, if you get offended by someone taking a knee, you're not a snowflake, you're patriotic. That's really weird. Another thing that they do is the people who swear up and down. The people that use the argument Obama became president, so clearly racism is non-existent. Right? Obama became president, so structural racism doesn't exist. They don't really know Obama's background. Obama's family is like tied to the CIA, so it's actually not that surprising they became president. But those people, right? The ones who say there's no law that says that if racism is allowed anymore. So clearly systematic and structural racism is no longer a thing, because there's no such thing as a trickle down effect. Like, because everybody knows once you get cancer, you just go through chemotherapy one time and it just disappears, right? Because that's essentially what racism is. It's the cancer in the society that took hundreds of years to develop, and it was damn near stage 4. Okay. So the people who get so mad at anyone who dares to call racism or a racist act exactly what it is, they are the first to scream out racism. They call Colin Kaepernick a racist. He never even made he never said anything about anybody's race other than black people getting mistreated in this country, which is true by every single legitimate measure and quantitative piece of evidence. This is true. You want to talk about schools, how schools are funded, to college, how people get hired afterwards, to the workforce in general, to how CEOs decide to hire, to the past of Black Wall Street, in the past of the Wilmington Massacre, to how politicians are treated and pimped in the black community because they're not given a seat at the table unless they play into the hands of the white elite, no matter what party it is. It's happening in the Green Party. It's reality. The black people and minorities in general are not treated equally. And when they hear Colin Kaepernick say that he's a racist, I don't even think they understand what the definition of racism is. But they do. They very absolutely. They know what racism means. What they actually want to say is, nigger, shut the fuck up. That's actually what they want to say. They want to say, nigger, know your place. When they call them racist, they're saying, nigger, throw the football and dance for me like you're paid to do. When you're on Facebook and you see someone being abused, harassed, heckled because of their race, and someone calls you racist for calling it out, what they're saying is, nigger, stop calling racial acts racist, because it makes me uncomfortable, because I don't want to have to deal with people who treat other people in my life this exact same way. I don't want to have to call out my family members. I don't want to have to call out my friends. They scream racist for kneeling during a national anthem. How does taking a knee in the national anthem have to do with hating white people? Those things don't even make any sense. If you want to talk about from the racist aspect, we all know the national anthem is racist as hell. When LeBron James had his house sprayed, the word nigger was on his house sprayed. He speaks out about it, and people tell him to stick to basketball. If you don't know what that means, it means dance, monkey, dance. I don't want to deal with the realities of what my community are doing to you. This is supposed to be my escape. What you all don't understand, all I can think about, because I was an athlete, the same thing I thought about when I was going to be a lawyer, the same thing that I think about today. Do you know why so many people want to be, if black people, black males, black women want to be professional athletes? It's because only through money can we at least buy the escape from the reality that we are surrounded by daily. And even then, we can't escape it. Even then, LeBron, who is worth God knows how much money he's going to be worth in 3 to 4 years, has a house in the hills. He has a house in Miami, in Ohio, in LA. Beloved by everyone of all races and ethnicities, except for those who actually like basketball and understand that he's not as good as he thinks he is. Seriously. Even LeBron can't escape it if he doesn't play ball. You got to be like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan comes from a military background, which is military background, same thing with Shaquille O'Neal. Military background for black people is the same thing as like black people who strive to be like straight black men who strive to meet the conservative assimilation standards set by white Christian males. Like it's like a race. White Christian males hate gay people, so hyper masculine black males hate gay people too because they want to. It's a race, right? So that's how like Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal are. They don't really care about the black community. They attribute everything they've done to the success of themselves, nothing to do with their surroundings. They don't think their surroundings had anything to do with it. Even though both Shaq and Michael Jordan came from nuclear homes, military backgrounds, very secure household and foundation. Well, that and that one was 6'6" and one was 7'3". So there was that. But my point is, people like LeBron, they get told to stay in their place. So if LeBron, who wasn't even sitting during the national anthem protest, gets told to stay in his place after a person clearly sprays nigger on his house, after he calls out someone, a president, saying racist, derogatory things, how do you think they're going to react when somebody like Colin Kaepernick, who he was saved by his white adoptee parents? What they don't talk about when they talk about his white adoptee parents, his adopted mother is in extreme support of everything Colin Kaepernick is doing. In fact, if you ever went to Teresa Kaepernick's Twitter, you would know exactly why Colin Kaepernick turned out the way he did. She is about woke as can be. Whenever Donald Trump called Colin Kaepernick and those who participate in national anthem protests sons of bitches, she was like, well, I'm one proud bitch. She's woke. He's super woke. Okay? So, but they don't mention that part. They say, oh, but he was saved by white people. He should, but that's that shit. That's that slave master mentality, right? I gave you a house. I gave you some pork. For those of you who don't know, that pork thing is, that's why black people eat chitlins, hog maws, all that good stuff. Like, that's why we love that southern stuff. It's not really, it's southern, but southern because it came from slavery, and we had to eat every part of pig. You can't waste when you're a slave. So that's where that came from. But they don't mention that part. They say, be happy that we gave you something. Be happy that you're allowed to play in this league. Because you should be at home. You should be in Chicago getting shot. That's what they want to say. It's dog whistles. Other racist white people know what they're trying to say. We can't even talk about racism anymore in legitimate manner, and without every conversation about like clear racism turning into prove that he's being racist, prove that cop shot him because he was black, and then you're like, okay, prove that it wasn't, because we can point to all the systematic standards compiled over the course of decades and centuries to prove that the likelihood of a cop shooting another black male in the black community is likely to be because of a racial bias. And they'll say, what about profiling then? They profile because black people are more likely to commit other black people. They're more likely to be violent. Oh, so you're admitting then that structural racism is a thing. Have you ever wondered why black people in that particular community have ended up like that? Maybe because their education system is bad. Maybe because their fathers have been incarcerated for selling marijuana, who literally people are making millions of dollars off of right now. Do you walk down the street looking at white people the same way you look at a black person? A white person in a poor neighborhood, do you view them the same way as you look at a black person in a poor neighborhood? Probably not. Even though white people commit white on white crime at, actually, depending on which study you look at, higher rates or around the same rate as black people. But if they're committing that crime at about the same rate, then hold up. That means white people are killing more white people, right? Because there's only 12% of us. A lot more of them. 13% now, I think. So, this is the realities. These are the realities that Colin Kaepernick is speaking out against and that Colin Kaepernick is dealing with. And the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I know a lot of you have this conversation almost daily in some way, form, or fashion, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be my sports people who watch sports debates and things like that on YouTube that are on Facebook. I know that y'all are having these conversations, and so I want to give you some ammunition from somebody who watches sports, who knows the history of a lot of these sports and the history of the politics behind sports. And I was talking on my Facebook with a lot of my friends and with my close friends about, as you get older, you start caring about the business of sports, because especially I although many of you know me as being very objective, because I am, the things that I take pride in are subjective because of my background, because I am a black man, because I see black people railroaded, I see black people blackballed, I see it. I've been blackballed because of my race. I've seen a close family member get blackballed because he's Mexican, and they pass him on promotion 2 to 3 times, even though they constantly praise him. They brought in a person with 3 or 4 months experience and then promoted them. I've seen it happen. I know these things happen. So as you get more invested in the business side, and this is something that I urge you all to pay attention to if you watch sports, if you're young, or encourage your kids to pay attention to if they watch sports. If they watch basketball, they need to know as much about what's going on in that front office, the history of that owner, the history of that general manager, the history of that coach, because that's the only way black people go from, man, I hope that white guy can pay me. And I say white guy because those are the ones who own all the teams. So I'm not generalizing. This is a fact. But I hope that white guy can pay me. They go from, I hope that white guy can pay me, to, wow, I want to be an owner so I can effectively make it so that players can take their demand. Players that, mind you, like I said, both leagues are dominated by black people. I want to make it that players if they're black, they don't have to be in the pockets of a white person to the point where they don't have control of their own destiny or their what they want to say or what they want to do, if it's in the spirit of doing the right thing. It's important. When I see what's happening in the NBA, I get so much joy out of it, because one day there's going to be black owners. Not going to be one. There's not going to be two. Yeah, LeBron just made 230 or 250 million or something like that, or he's about to make it. Curry just made like 208, 213 million. But that's not where it's going to stop. LeBron's child is going to come to the NBA one day. And LeBron's grandchild is going to come to the NBA one day. People who came from absolutely nothing. Because to own an NBA team, you usually have to come from money, right? You got to be a billionaire most of the time to own an NBA team. To be a billionaire, you had to have a certain amount of circumstances work out perfectly in your favor in order for you to allow you to pursue the craft that you want to pursue, because you're not worried about a foundation or struggling or anything like that. You're worried about concentrating on being the master of the thing that you are the master of. Some people are intelligent when it comes to sports. Sports intelligence is a thing. If you don't know that, look at some of the greatest players ever and the way they can do things that nobody else can do. Allen Iverson, for example. Tom Brady is another example. So you should be able to use that in the same way and profit. And if you're an expert at it, from whatever side of that fence, whether it be athletically or if you understand the game and the marketing side of it, you should be able to use that to prosper. And now we're going to have kids who are only a generation removed from being a millionaire. Or even kids who that's their first time going into the league. Black children, Latino children. And they're going to be able to become owners one day. They're going to be able to get their friends together. LeBron, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul are going to be able to put all their money together and buy an NBA team. They're going to they can do pro-black initiatives. Things that like LeBron does. He's very philanthropic, by the way. Like, that's huge going forward. And when you're talking about oppression, that is an aspect of oppression. Not owning your labor is an aspect of oppression. Because when you can't own your labor, that means you don't have the money to do so. If you don't have the money to do so, that means, and you can't for some reason finagle your way into owning your labor, that means you don't have the influence. If you don't have the influence, that means somebody's trying to hold on to that power, right? If somebody's trying to hold on to that power, that means they can influence the community and the people around you to see you however they want to. And we see that in Hollywood. We see that in sports. I spent a lot of time on Colin Kaepernick, so I'm going to wrap that part up. My bad, everybody. I apologize. But, man, where we at for? Yeah, so sorry about that. I didn't mean to spend so much time on Colin Kaepernick. What time is it? But now we're going to talk about Aaron Hernandez and that crazy situation. So, as most of you all know, Aaron Hernandez, and this is the reason we're going to talk about this as well. It's not just about sports, but like I said, I always love when sports and politics kind of collides, so we can have a conversation about it at the level that everybody will understand. And I think mental illness is something that everybody can relate to, or something that everybody has been affected by or knows someone that has been affected by it. Now, for those of you who don't know CTE, CTE is like a degenerative brain disease that results in a lot of different things: dark thoughts, harming yourself, harming others. It really makes you go from rational thought processes to irrational thought processes, and irrational actions because of that. Now, it came out recently that Aaron Hernandez had CTE, and it wasn't just CTE. At 27 years old, he had he was at the third stage, which is only 4 stages of CTE, and he was already in the 3rd stage at 27 years old. Now, there have been questions that have arisen because of that. They're trying to figure out if that could have anything to do with him killing himself. They're trying to figure out if that had anything to do with him potentially harming others. If that had anything to do with, anything that could. Because I'm not saying that he was wasn't a quote unquote bad person, whatever that means nowadays, because there are good people who do bad things behind closed doors. I'm not saying that his actions are justified, but I am saying if you are one of those people who are saying, oh, he's a murderer, feel bad for the family, you are in the wrong. You're wrong. It means you fundamentally do not understand CTE. And if you wouldn't say that about somebody who was bipolar or had Down syndrome or maybe had manic depression or, anything that can be clinically diagnosed, then you should not say that about somebody who had CTE. A lot of, once again, sports debaters made that crazy fallacy this weekend, in response to CTE, because, we should be thinking about the family, not Aaron Hernandez CTE and his actions. And I'm like, we can't do both, because this could be a problem. Do you understand that, ladies and gentlemen? If we discount Aaron Hernandez's CTE and something massive is learned, the reason that Aaron Hernandez's CTE is important is because, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, he's 27 years old. He's 27 years old. He died at 27 years old. He committed suicide. He potentially harmed others. He had sociopathic tendencies. People who knew him outside of his other life said that they couldn't even imagine him doing anything that were supposedly suggested that he'd done. He was in a bar fight. He was drunk, and he supposedly committed manslaughter. He supposedly either killed somebody or conspired to kill someone. He beat one charge, but he did not beat the other, even though it was in the middle of an appeal. I don't like calling people a criminal if they're in the middle of an appeal, because the justice system is already rigged enough as it is, and I don't want to, add to that. I think it's important to call things what they are. He was convicted, but he was in the middle of an appeal before he died, and it actually looked like he was potentially going to beat both cases. But he acted irrational. Now, one thing that you are going to hear is that he had bad behavior in college. That he was a little off his rocker in college. What you're probably not going to hear is that he played maxed out minutes in college. You're going to hear the same thing about high school. Well, he was a little off, even though he may not have been violent in high school. He did have problems in high school. One thing you're not going to hear is he had maxed out minutes on both offense and defense in high school. He has been getting hit in the head constantly, over and over and over again, in his community. It was not. It wasn't like some little suburb. I'm gonna put it like that. His father left him at really, really early. He had a lot of family problems, a lot of family issues. Now, oftentimes, what people will do is to point out that Aaron Hernandez was just a bad man. They'll say a name like Junior Seau. For those of you who don't know, he was a person who committed suicide, and they believe that it was CTE who caused him to commit suicide. There are other players who have harmed themselves as a result of CTE. And they say that those players, they all harmed themselves, but what other 27-year-old acts like Aaron Hernandez did? I can never imagine. So you're trying to tell me you haven't seen other 27-year-old players who have been playing football their entire lives act out violently outwardly based off their background? So we don't have a huge domestic violence issue right now in the NFL, ladies and gentlemen. Because CTE you have to account for the irrational, right? So if you account from a person's background, plus the psychology it takes to be a football player, combined with CTE, combined with the fact that it is very, very, very likely that he could have been bipolar. He could have had any number of, because by the way, that information has not gotten released, and I don't think that it's going to be released, but he could have had a number of mental illnesses that he was being treated for medicinally that could have affected whether or not that CTE was going to be compounded with the issues that he had already had in place. It takes some type of, killing yourself is hard. You have to be in a dark place. A dark place. What rational human being would kill himself after he just appealed and won? And it looked like he was going to win the other appeal also, which means he was going to get his money. What rational human being would put himself in a situation where you're on one of the best teams, as one of the best 2 tight ends in the league. The other best tight end in the league is on your team who's always injured, which means you're going to get all the numbers. What rational person would do that? What rational person would gamble with their career, the lives of their family, his kid? Maybe a rational person wouldn't do that. Maybe only an irrational person would do that. I am not saying at all that his actions did not deserve some type of punishment. But we have just found out that a 27-year-old male had a stage of CTE not often found in people who have gone there, played football for an entire career, where their whole thing is they get hit or they hit other people. He's not even always getting hit. He's not even getting, making strong contact every play. He's bigger than half the people on the field. 27 years old. We're trying to say, and guess what the problem with this entire discussion is? We can't even diagnose CTE without the person being dead. Because CTE, weirdly enough, is like ADHD. With ADHD, you get anxiety, you get depression, you obviously have the attention issue. You have an issue with talking about yourself a lot, which I know is weird, it's funny, but it's because you are very experiential. You judge things based off of in relation to your own personal experiences. So you have the symptoms of a lot of different I don't want to call them disorders. We'll call them disorders. You have the symptoms of a lot of different disorders when you have ADHD. But it's really hard because of that to self-diagnose if you have ADHD, or if you're actually just depressed, or if you're just mentally autistic. Because some people feel like that sometimes, depending on how severe your ADHD is. That's like CTE. You can't cut open your skull to diagnose whether a person has ADHD. And unfortunately, with ADHD, you really can't tell, because it's about the activity that's in your pineal gland. And your pineal gland obviously isn't going to be as active when you're dead. But understand something. They tried to say that, other 27-year-olds who go through the same type of rigor that Hernandez did, they don't act like this. Ladies and gentlemen, have y'all heard of the football player who tried to kill his baby before it was born, and the woman, his baby's mother? It happened. Have you ever heard of a player who was formerly on the Carolina Panthers, was also on the Cowboys, named Greg Hardy? If you are near your computer or near your phone, I want you to Google a picture of Greg Hardy and look into his eyes. And tell me that this man does not look like he has something wrong with him. His whole job is knocking people out, by the way. You have a guy like Ray Rice, who seems to be perfectly normal. Totally normal. If you've ever seen Ray Rice I used to be I wasn't a Ravens fan, but I was a Ray Rice and Joe Flacco fan. We've watched them a lot, and plus one of our hometown people from North Carolina was the Super Bowl champion with the Ravens that year. I can't remember his name right now, but so I was a fan. Ray Rice did not look like he was ever. When he got caught, he kind of was confused, I did that. Domestic violence runs rampant. NFL players are you don't see anywhere near the type of behaviors that you see in the NBA as the NFL. We can even look at Floyd Mayweather and other boxers. Yes, of the aggression that is required to be a good boxer or a good NFL player could potentially make somebody, give them a higher likelihood of committing domestic violence. But it wasn't like Mayweather was walking around punching people in the fucking throat, no matter how good of a boxer he was. It took him being emotionally charged and in making the decision to actively hit his woman. Multiple times. It happened multiple times in front of his children. And if you've ever seen Mayweather around his kids, he's one of the best fathers ever. If you've seen how charitable he is, he doesn't make mistakes in any other aspect of his life. Besides the aspect that control, like, because when you are emotionally invested in something, you react differently to it. I think we all know that. But we can't diagnose CTE until, oh, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Mayweather has been getting hit in the head since he was like 7 years old. He's been a boxer. His dad was a boxer. His dad trained him since he was a kid. Mayweather doesn't do the one mistake that he does not make in this world is something that will mess up his money. And domestic violence clearly is one of those things that would mess up his money. And he did it anyway. It's like he blacked out. He wasn't thinking. Domestic violence is highly connected to trauma in the brain. Anyone who's ever served in the military, been to war, served in the Middle East or just in general, like in any type of war, and came back, you know the rate of people committing domestic violence, committing murder because of the mental trauma, the PTSD. Easier to diagnose. But guess what? Just like with PTSD, guess what happens? Just like with CTE. You're going to harm others, or you're going to kill yourself, or you're going to do both. So now the league has a responsibility. And it's funny to me that they've been trying to avoid it. Now, there's been some talking heads on specific shows who have talked about it and have tried to shame the family of Aaron Hernandez for trying to sue the NFL. Thinking that, oh, the NFL had nothing to do with that. And they actually tried to sue the NCAA too. But oh no, you can't say the NFL had nothing to do with that. We all know the NFL has been working night in and night out to prevent a lot of information about concussion, CTE, and everything alike, and how it is linked back to the NFL. It's not because they say, oh yeah, Aaron Hernandez, he made the choice to play football. These men are making the choice to participate in this barbaric activity. But are you really making a choice if the information that is coming out isn't actually accurate? Are you making an informed decision? Is it really your choice at that point? Because the truth of the matter is, a lot of parents don't know about some of the stuff that is happening right now in the sport. And they're letting their kids play, getting their hopes up to the point where now their college career, their education, their potential for financial success is dependent on everything that they've dedicated themselves to their entire lives. And now at that point, it's too late to get out. If he did, people, you can't say CTE or not, he's a murderer. No, you can't say that. If you find out someone at 27 years old was in the second to last stage of CTE and he was in the perfect situation where no one with any rational thought process would mess it up, especially in the way that he did, then you can't say, nah, even if he has CTE, he's still a murderer. You can't say that. If a person was bipolar, you take that seriously. If a person was depressed, you take that seriously. If a person was clinically diagnosed to be schizophrenic. If a person is schizophrenic and they kill somebody, they're not going to jail. They're going to the psych ward. Yes or no? You take that seriously. You're like, why wasn't he or she getting the help that they needed so they couldn't murder someone? Well, the truth of the matter is, it's because the NFL has been downplaying the damage that concussions and CTE does to players. They want to talk about the CTE cases and make a big deal, oh, that player killed themselves. Because it's one thing when the player is only a danger to themselves. But they don't want to talk about the domestic violence and what... There is even a discussion right now, like amongst the YouTube world, because I do like sports commentary as well. But there's this people are worried now that what if the guy who was about to be suspended, Ezekiel Elliott, because I know he got off of one, but he had a few cases where they were saying that he was committing domestic violence. So he got off of one, but there's a lot of times for somebody to say you committed domestic violence for you to not have done it at any point. So we'll just leave that at that. But what if CTE is affecting him? Because Ezekiel Elliott played multiple positions in college, dominant running back in the NFL. But that's a huge transition because he ran more than almost any running back in the NFL, and he was 22, 23 years old. Really, for a man, that's still developing as far as your brain is concerned. So if you've been playing running back your whole life, you've been the number one target. Same thing with Ray Rice. You don't think that he was sincere? You couldn't tell. If you couldn't see the sincerity when Ray Rice apologized, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't excuse his actions. It doesn't justify them. But it does rationalize them. And for the sake of the league, for the sake of the wives, the children of these players, the players themselves, you can't just shrug this off and say that Aaron Hernandez is a murderer. You can't do that. You got to deal with this. Just like you don't shrug off someone who's bipolar. Just like you don't shrug off someone who has autism. Just like you don't shrug off someone who has schizophrenia. Who has depression. You don't get to shrug this off. If your 27-year-old superstar athlete with everything to lose and literally nothing to gain kill someone and you find out he has CTE at the second to last stage, and you couldn't find out, and really it even affects how he was charged and how he was punished, because if we found out that it was due to CTE, he shouldn't have been convicted and then put in a federal prison, because you're going to you actually commit suicide. You're a danger to yourself and others. The league has had a concerted effort this week, and it's been making me sick to my stomach. He's a murderer, CTE or not. No! You don't get to say that. He's a murderer. Oh, snap, he has CTE? Well, we need to investigate this, because if you get to do that, if you get to say he's a murderer, CTE or not, that's a cop-out, so that you do not investigate and figure out if it is linked to a lot of the cases of violence, of player-on-player violence, player-on-spouse violence, player-on-child. Because guess what? Another great example of this would be Adrian Peterson. Everything to lose, in the prime of his career, in the prime of a great contract, breaking every record, all the cameras on him, and he takes it too far while spanking his child. But if you've ever seen Adrian Peterson or heard him talk, he's an extremely bright guy, very, very sincere guy, extremely sweet guy. But Adrian Peterson is like a tank. And the thing about tanks is they take a lot of damage. And you can only do so much to protect your head. Especially that big old head Adrian Peterson got. And once again, when he's explaining himself and apologizing, he looks like, I can't believe that happened. Like, I don't even understand how we even got to that point. If they find out that these football players, because it's not just about the CTE, once again, it's not just about the CTE. It could be combined with other mental illnesses that they're experiencing that nobody wants to talk about. We don't know how CTE works in conjunction with other mental illnesses. That's actually really scary. And it's not even being considered or talked about. If any of you have heard this being talked about in mainstream, I would love to see any articles about it. But we don't even know how they work in conjunction with other mental illnesses. We don't know what medicine does to people who, if maybe you do have a mental illness, maybe you're going through manic depression and you're a football player and you're taking medication in conjunction with your mental illness and you have CTE. We don't know how that affects football players in the short term or the long. So, yes, if we find out, and which we did find out, we know now Aaron Hernandez had stage 3 out of 4 CTE at 27 years old. And he gave up everything for whatever reason to settle a dispute with a bar fight. Now we have to investigate. Because it's weird that the players, because this doesn't happen with quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are super protected. Right? It's actually kind of weird. When you think about it, when the last time you seen that quarterback was on the news for beating the hell out of his spouse or his spouse or his child? Never. Ray Rice, running back. Adrian Peterson, running back. Greg Hardy, defensive lineman. Ezekiel Elliott, running back. Who was your boy? Aaron Hernandez, tight end, who played offense and defense in high school, maxed out his minutes, who was the lead receiver for Miami. Not Miami. Was it Miami or FSU? I want to say it was Miami. It was Florida or Miami. I can't remember which one. But either way, he's a tight end, always getting hit. Hell, Ray Lewis, undersized linebacker, always making contact with his head. Junior Seau, who killed himself, lineman. It seems to me to be pretty clear. Those who are taking the most damage, play after play, even if they're not the centerpiece of the play, they're the ones who are, you see on the news for beating someone, for killing somebody or killing themselves. Oh, Sean Taylor, who was into some weird stuff, who, for those of you who don't know, he's a free safety who got killed because he was into some weird stuff with some people that he shouldn't have been into. I really want to know what that was about, but because if it comes out that CTE is being linked to all of these deaths and these violent cases, the NFL has to go. That's it. Because once again, it's not that people are making a decision to play. It's the fact that people are making a decision to play with half-hearted information and a half-hearted effort to get that information out to ensure that people make an educated decision. That is why if the Hernandez family wants to sue the NFL, I am perfectly okay with it. And you should be as well. So thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate it. Please join our One Follow $1 campaign. If you're on YouTube and this is your first time watching, please subscribe, hit that notification bell. For Facebook, always a pleasure. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to do shortened version of both of these videos tomorrow, so don't worry. Please share this one, of course, but I'll make one that's more palatable for the audiences. I'm glad I was back. I'm glad to make the comeback. I'm glad that my internet's back. I missed you all a lot. I really, really did. There was so much that was happening that I wanted to go to Facebook and oh my God. I'm sure because y'all see me post a lot more links on Facebook than I normally do. I usually just do videos about a lot of the things I've been posting about. But it's been crazy just not being able to talk to you all about these type of issues, because the first thing I thought, even with the Aaron Hernandez thing, was wow, there are so many people I know with mental illnesses, or people who know or have experience with people with mental illnesses, who would be freaking out if they were listening to the conversations that just discount, oh, he's a murderer. It doesn't matter if he has a mental illness. That's ridiculous. Okay, it's a ridiculous notion. So, but I miss you all. I hope you all miss me. But we're back at it. Going to be bringing you the new stuff every day. As usual. Like I said, I got I think about 15 or 20 videos like that are just I have to catch up on with you all. Not even the new stuff that's probably going to happen this week. So 15 or 20 videos at least, combined with the stuff that's going to happen this week. Got a lot of live streams we're going to do this week as well. So super excited. Can't wait to get it started. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, find your balance. Peace.